Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and today we're going to be enjoying a Tier 9 battle on two brothers. And don't worry, nobody's going to be doing anything stupid like sailing up the middle right at the start of the match. Although at least one member of the team really wanted to try. He's clearly been watching far too many Flambas videos, and when his wishes were denied, pretty much sulked and did nothing but complain for the rest of the match. It's not the star of today's show, however. Asaka here in the Tier 9 Premium US Navy 18-inch gun-armed battleship, the USS Georgia. The USS Georgia is an interesting ship, not to be confused with the World War I vintage Nevada-class USS Georgia BB-15, which actually existed, or the Ohio-class missile submarine USS Georgia, which also, in fact, still exists. This is a paper project. Imagine if you took a Missouri or an Iowa, and instead of giving it 9 16-inch guns, you gave it 6 18-inch guns. Then, just for a little bit of added flavour, you give it the almost exactly same secondary batteries that you find on the exceptional Tier 8 USS Massachusetts. You borrow the Massachusetts short cool-down repair party, and then you give it the Bourgogn's engine boost. You end up with a bit of a Frankenstein's monster of a ship, which has the potential to be a bit shit, because it only has 6 guns in 3 turrets. A bit like the Gneisenau at Tier 7. And Gneisenau captains are probably already shaking their heads in sorrow at the legendarily unfortunate accuracy of the Gneisenau's 6 15-inch guns. But the Georgia has better accuracy and a shorter reload to compensate. Meanwhile, if you've been paying attention to the team chat, you will no doubt have noticed that the Seattle on the team has been desperately begging everybody to help him charge up the middle. And the general consensus of opinion from the rest of the team appears to be that if he wants to go and commit suicide at the start of the battle, then he can do it on his own time. The Seattle is arguing so passionately that he's forgotten to press his W key and hasn't actually moved since the start of the battle. When he does eventually start moving, he's not going to go very far. He's just going to go and sit at the entrance to the central channel while continuing to argue his case and being about as much use as an ashtray on a motorbike to the rest of the team in the process. The friendly Mayhem up ahead, I'm not entirely sure what he was doing. He started to lay a smokescreen. Well, he finished laying the smokescreen, but didn't bother slowing down to stay inside it. So either he screwed up, or he was trying to lay concealment for Asaka here in the Georgia. But, well, he's a battleship. He's not going to stay concealed even behind a smokescreen as soon as he fires those guns. If that's the case, the Mayhem got himself spotted, started taking a lot of damage, appeared to rethink his options, turned around and seemed to be trying to head back into the safety of the smokescreen, but got killed before he could make it that far. So I guess we'll give the Mayhem the benefit of the doubt and say he was laying the smokescreen for the team and then trying to continue to spot, but, well, it didn't really work out and he died. So 10 out of 10 for effort, 3 out of 10 for execution. It's not going too well for the team as a whole, even at this early stage. They've obviously lost the first kill with the destruction of the Mayhem, and they're down 2-1 caps. Although the final cap is being contested by the Udaloy. But, well, the Udaloy isn't interested in shooting given his position away, with a minimum of 5 enemy ships up there, potentially shooting back. The Gneisenau, who's with Asaka, is turning around and getting the hell out of there, and it's only really this extremely brave New Orleans, who probably should be turning around and getting out of there, that's sticking around to back Asaka up. Could have been worse. The Fiji, who, yeah, of course, yeah, there are the Fiji's torpedoes, obviously. It looks like the Fiji has realised that he's overextended, and he's not staying inside the smoke to farm damage. He's just using it to mask himself as he peels back and disengages. And I've just noticed that of the 5, actually it looks more like 6 enemy ships up there, one of them is a Farragut. This is a Tier 9 battle. What is a Farragut, a Tier 6 destroyer, doing in a Tier 9 battle? Turns out we've got a bit of a failed division on the enemy team. The Farragut is divisioned up with a Colorado, who is a Tier 7 battleship, and has dragged the Farragut, the Tier 6 destroyer, into this Tier 9 battle. Wait a minute, a Fubuki. It turns out the failed division is even worse than we thought. The Colorado has divisioned up with 2 Tier 6 destroyers, the Farragut and the Fubuki. But the presence of a Fubuki in a smokescreen that close is definitely something to be concerned about. First, however, it'd be real nice if we could eliminate that Fiji before he makes it into cover around the side of the island. Well, that will do. And more torpedoes from a triple launcher, which doesn't actually help us, because it'd be really nice to know whose torpedoes they were. They could be the Fijis, but they could also be the Fubukis. The reason it'd be nice to know, because if they were the Fijis, then there might be some Fubuki torpedoes on the way as well. But, well, yeah. Oh, hang on a second. Enemy Jutland at 7 kilometres, firing his guns with less than a third of his health remaining. He won't be doing that again in a hurry. The overall situation for the team is actually not too bad here. They now control 2 of the caps, and they're contesting a third. The number of kills is the same on each side, but the local situation here, specifically for Osaka, is pretty grim. They've lost the New Orleans, obviously, and the Utiloi is still hanging on, providing some very, very valuable spotting. But the Gneiser now has very wisely turned tail and is now hiding behind an island to the south. The Seattle, who is the only other ship on the team actually capable of shooting at any of these enemies, isn't shooting at any of these enemies. So, great. By a remarkable stroke of luck, or perhaps he's a wizard and he can see the future, Osaka had activated his engine boost just in time to avoid what I assume were the Jutland's torpedoes. And then, with his guns already reloaded after having knocked out one of the Sinop's main battery turrets, he takes an experimental poke at the Nagato, with some fairly devastating results. With the Fubuki spotted, if there are any torpedoes on the way from him, he's not going to have to worry about them with that island in the way. The secondaries, of course, have been at work pretty much non-stop, setting multiple fires. The Nagato didn't appear to learn his lesson the first time. Sadly, only one of those shots hit, but it is a penetration, and it does over 5,000 damage. The Utiloi up ahead is taking the opportunity to rip the Fubuki apart in a short-range gunfight assisted by the secondaries of Osaka's Georgia, and somewhat predictably, he wins that fight. As Osaka passes 150,000 damage and collects his high caliber award, I'd like to draw your attention to the middle of the map, where it turns out that somebody did rush the middle, except they were on the enemy team. It's the enemy Cleveland. Despite the fact that the Seattle is sitting 500 meters away from the cap circle, he's not shooting the Cleveland either. I mean, if he doesn't want to shoot the Cleveland, he could at least radar him so other people can shoot him, but no, apparently thinking and breathing at the same time is just far too much like hard work. Meanwhile, Osaka still has his hands full dealing with these 2 extremely persistent Tier 7 battleships. Make that 1 extremely persistent Tier 7 battleship. After sinking the Sinop, he's now at 174,000 damage. It looks like that Nagato may be regretting the errors of his ways. Meanwhile, it's only now, after the Cleveland radared him and shot at him, that the Seattle has realised that there's an enemy ship 5 kilometres away from him, and it's taken him this long to get his turrets turned around and start doing something about it. Far too late, of course. The Cleveland has actually managed to complete the cap, while sitting anything between 3 and 5 kilometres away from a Tier 9 radar cruiser. A Tier 9 radar cruiser who desperately wanted to charge up the middle right at the start of the battle and was only persuaded not to do so by the general and complete apathy of the rest of the team when he made the suggestion. Personally, I think the team should have just encouraged him to get on with it, because they almost certainly wouldn't have missed his contribution. As Osaka continues to batter this Cleveland down, you may have noticed that he also just added the Confederate Award to his list of achievements. It's different to the Confederate Award in World of Tanks, where you just have to hit a certain number of enemy tanks. In World of Warships, you not only have to hit at least half of the ships on the enemy team, you also have to inflict at least 20% of their hit points in damage. Something that this far at least, Osaka has had absolutely no problem doing, as he claims the kill on the Cleveland, finishing him off with his secondary batteries, and collecting himself the Close Quarters Expert Award into the bargain. As he slides into the cap circle and starts reclaiming it for the team, the enemy Farragut, who's hidden in that smoke screen over there and not being radared by the Seattle as he flips the cap, did momentarily get spotted and suffer a couple of hits from Osaka's secondary gun batteries, one of which set afire. Coolest Kraken Unleashed ever. As Osaka pauses to complete the capture process and savour his victory, I thought for a brief moment that the Seattle was actually going to do something useful and assist in the cap. And while technically he is, I suspect it's more accidental than deliberate. It's just that the cap circle happens to be in the way as he fulfills his life ambition of charging up the middle. But the Seattle's not the only one that can do two things at the same time. Osaka is entirely capable of capping and finishing off the Nagato at the same time, claiming his 6th kill in the process. Can we just take a moment while we're here to just consider how this battle might have gone for Osaka's team if he hadn't been here? I mean, between the lot of them, they've managed to sink exactly one enemy ship. And the 6 kills that Osaka has managed to gain, they haven't been kill stealing either. He's on over 225,000 damage. He's earned every single one of those kills. Meanwhile, the Seattle, presumably a quiver with anticipation at the prospect of putting his lifetime ambition plan to rush the middle into action at last, is now requesting assistance from the rest of the team. First he broadcasts a general request for assistance to the team, and then a more specific request for assistance to the Gneisenau. These requests for assistance are greeted with about the same level of apathy now as they were at the beginning of the match. Although, to be completely fair, if you are going to push the middle in two brothers, at around about this time of the match is usually the best time to do it. Usually, just not today. Because if you have a look at the minimap, with the lone exception of this Colorado, every single surviving ship on the enemy team are all huddled up for mutual protection right around the northern exit of that channel. Think of them as a sort of USS Seattle welcoming committee. Of course, the Seattle isn't going to let silly little things like looking at his minimap dissuade him from fulfilling his lifelong ambition of pushing the middle on two brothers. He's going for it anyway. Meanwhile, back to Osaka and this Colorado. I can't help but wonder if this Colorado knows something that we don't, because just looking at the minimap would suggest that he is hopelessly overextended and biting off a little bit more than he could reasonably be expected to chew by choosing to run down a Tier 9 battleship on with 18-inch guns. This, by the way, is the leader of the Fail Division. He was the guy divisioned up with the 2 Tier 6 destroyers. But they're both dead, so there isn't actually anybody else lurking around here backing him up that we don't know about. And the Colorado is in fact hopelessly overextended, although we did a fair bit of damage to Osaka before he went down, but at the end of the day, he was just kill number 7, leaving Osaka with not far short of 300,000 damage done. And there are still 4 enemy ships to take care of. But the remaining enemy ships are all pretty much the big boys. 3 of them are Tier 9s, the Ibuki, the Frederick the Great, and a mostly full health USS Georgia of their own, with the only non-Tier 9 ship remaining on the enemy team being the Pan-Asian Xianyang Tier 8 destroyer. And between the 4 of them, they've just pretty much wiped out Osaka's team's left flank, obliterating both the Mars and the Sinop within bare seconds of each other. It's now 4 against 4. The Seattle has finally made it into the cap circle at the northern end of the gap between the 2 islands here on Two Brothers. You may have noticed that none of these enemy ships are actually targeting Osaka as he continues to pummel them with his 18-inch guns. Because hey, why shoot at an angled battleship when you can shoot at a destroyer and a light cruiser instead? The Xianyang claims yet another kill, finishing off the lone surviving Mars. Somebody on the enemy team, and I think it's the Ibuki, is now actually targeting Osaka, while everybody else is focusing their fire on the Seattle. Osaka, meanwhile, he has taken hits from the Frederick the Great's secondaries, and they have set multiple fires, But the shorter than average cooldown of the Georgia's damage control is going to be a bit of a lifesaver here, and he continues to batter down the Frederick the Great, taking off a further 50,000 of its health before the Seattle finally makes himself useful by shaving off the last 599. Now remember, throughout that engagement, Osaka was only being targeted by one ship, and the Ibuki's guns are pointing in this direction, but he's not shooting. And Osaka is no longer targeted by any enemy ships, which almost certainly means that the Ibuki has just launched torpedoes. And when I say just launched torpedoes, I mean just now, because if he'd launched them any earlier, there's a very good chance he would have probably sunk the Frederick the Great by accident. So, eyes open for any torpedoes. We're not going to pay any further attention to the Ibuki, because cool ships don't look at explosions, and the secondaries finished him off too. And sure enough, Ibuki torpedoes passing harmlessly down the starboard side just as the Seattle succumbs to his inevitable fate, and right before that happened, he did pop his radar, defying all expectations by proving that he does actually know that he has radar and is aware of how to use it. Not entirely sure why, since at the time he used the radar, every single ship on the enemy team was spotted because they were all shooting at him. But I guess it just helped to make him feel useful. Anyway, now it's 2 versus 2. The enemy Georgia has about double the health that Osaka does, and Osaka doesn't have any heals left. The Gneisenau has finally caught up, very wisely choosing to not follow the doomed Seattle up the central channel. And this is going to be a tough fight for the Gneisenau. I mean, he's only tier 7. He only has 6 guns, and they're only 15-inch. And he also doesn't have that mega hydro that German battleships of tier 8 and higher have, which is going to be a bit of an issue, considering that there's a Xian Yang on the enemy team who already has 3 kills and clearly knows what he's doing. Osaka considering how best to handle this Georgia. The Gneisenau is getting stuck in, and it looks like he's hugging the islands to the south, which means there's an opportunity, there he is, to catch the enemy Georgia in a broadside, but realises at the last second that the Georgia is heading straight towards him, although he is shooting at the Gneisenau, which if you think about it makes sense. And if you saw the fireworks going off there, if the red shell tracers weren't enough of an indication, the enemy Georgia does have Bull Halsey as his captain. What the enemy Georgia's doing here does make sense on a number of levels. I mean, if you're going to get shot at by a battleship, it's better to get shot at by a battleship with 15-inch guns into your broadside than a battleship with 18-inch guns into your broadside. So he's angling against Osaka and keeping the island between himself and the Gneisenau in order to ensure that the Gneisenau can't sneak up and torpedo him. Unfortunately, while it was a good plan, the combination of fire from the Gneisenau, the secondaries and the main battery guns from Osaka's Georgia are proving to be a little bit too much for the enemy Georgia to handle. Of course, he's got exactly the same short cooldown damage control as Osaka, and with the island between him and the Gneisenau's secondaries and main battery guns aren't helping him sink any faster. So, although the Gneisenau is turning about and might actually be able to get some shots away here, he's sneaking around back around the other side of the island and has in fact claimed the kill. So good job, Gneisenau. That just leaves the Xian Yang, whose position was revealed because he was shooting at the Gneisenau in an effort to finish him off. He's now gone dark. But honestly, I don't think there's anything the Xian Yang can reasonably be expected to do here. With the amount of points that Osaka's team are currently on, that Xian Yang has got around about 15 seconds to sink 2 enemy ships before Osaka's team reach 1,000 points and this match ends. And I think the Xian Yang has just come to that conclusion himself, because he's shooting, giving his position away and just trying to get some more damage in before this match reaches its inevitable conclusion. And that, boys and girls, I'm sure it's not going to come as a great surprise to many of you, but with 408,000 damage done, that is more damage than anybody has ever done in the USS Georgia. By far. The second highest amount of damage ever done in the USS Georgia is a pretty impressive total of 350,000 done by a player who goes by the name of Firestrike, and while 350,000 is pretty impressive, it's far short of the 408,000 that Osaka managed to carve out for himself in this battle. So, Osaka, congratulations on your world record. It's going to take some beating. And everyone else, I hope you enjoyed this performance and this video. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.